Good evening and welcome to Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas' telephone town hall meeting. This telephone town hall is like a traditional town hall meeting. It gives you a chance to hear from Congresswoman Tsongas about issues before Congress or anything that's on your mind, but from the convenience of your own home. In just a moment, Congresswoman Tsongas will give a few brief opening remarks. Then anyone on the call will have an opportunity to ask her a question. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during the call, just simply press *3 on your phone, and you'll be connected with a member of her staff and be put in to ask a question. Since we anticipate that many people on the call will have questions, after pressing *3, when you're connected with a member of the staff members, they will take down some of your information so that we can connect you with the Congresswoman in turn. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible during the course of the next hour. And to do so, we unfortunately won't have time for follow-up questions. So please try to ask your full question when you come on the line with the Congresswoman. One quick technical issue I wanted to point out before we get started is that there is sometimes a little bit of lag time in between questions. So please stay with us if there is a brief pause in the discussion as we move on to the next question. We will try to get to as many questions as we can over the course of the next hour, but if we are unable to get to your question this evening, you will still have the opportunity to leave it as a voicemail for the Congresswoman. To do so, please stay on the line at the end of the call, and you'll be able to leave a message with your question, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Again, if you'd like to ask the Congresswoman a question, please press *3 on your phone now. And with that, I will turn it over to Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas.
Thank you, everybody, for joining me and taking some time out of your evening hours as you're home. I hope you all had a great St. Patrick's Day. I know we all wish that as we looked outside, there were a little more green grass and a little less snow, but we do know spring is coming. I appreciate so much the opportunity to connect through these virtual town halls. Technology allows me to talk with you from the comfort of your homes. I know that there are many issues on your minds, and I will try to answer as many questions as possible during the next hour. As a reminder, to ask me a question or give your input at any point, just press *3 on your telephone. The House of Representatives is out of session this week for a congressional district work period. I take full advantage of these work periods to meet with residents, local companies, and organizations to talk about the issues that are important to them so I can bring these concerns back to Washington, D.C. For example, this week I'll be meeting with senior citizens at the Clinton Senior Center. I'll be talking about jobs, economic growth, and education initiatives with the Massachusetts Workforce Investment Board, and I will be visiting the brand new Allied Health and Technology Center in Lawrence, along with Governor Patrick, a great new initiative in the heart of the city. And just yesterday, I hosted a meeting with my Veterans Advisory Committee, which I put together when I was first elected so that I could stay connected to local veterans, their families, and veterans organizations providing key services to our veterans. I was fortunate that in this meeting, Massachusetts Secretary of Veterans Services, Coleman Nee, was also able to join us, along with numerous local veterans and veterans service representatives. As I've been in Washington, I've learned how Massachusetts really is in the forefront of all its work on behalf of veterans. And I also find that as a result of these meetings, a number of the legislative ideas that I've followed through with in Washington came about as a result of these meetings, including my push to make body armor lighter and more functional for our soldiers. So yesterday we had a very productive discussion about critical issues important to America's military families, and I look forward to bringing some of these ideas back to Congress with me. Again, to ask me a question or give your input at any point, just press *3 on your telephone. Around the district this week and from many constituents who've been calling my office, it's clear that Americans, we are all very focused on several economic issues still facing our country. Job growth is high among everyone's priority list, and that's certainly important. Here in Massachusetts, we have an opportunity to grow the economy and jobs through advanced manufacturing and innovative technology development. We have more work to do to keep jobs here on United States soil. For example, I am working with Representative Mike Michaud of Maine to support the domestic shoe manufacturing industry, which has a large presence here in New England and especially in the 3rd District. Massachusetts, as we all know, has a unique ecosystem of cutting-edge companies, a skilled workforce, and world-class academic institutions that all together make us a hub of innovation. So investing in training and education programs will help prepare our workforce for this next generation of manufacturing jobs. Again, remember to ask me a question or give your input at any point. Just press *3 on your telephone. 2 other economic issues that I hear about often are the potential to raise the minimum wage and the need to renew unemployment insurance. In January, the Lawrence Eagle Tribune editorialized about the importance of extending unemployment insurance. They wrote, quote, "For the recovery of for this recession to be considered complete, it needs to include all Americans," unquote. Like many Americans, I agree with the Tribune's assessment, and I wrote an op-ed outlining my support for renewing unemployment insurance for the long-term unemployed. I have heard from too many 3rd District residents who have been negatively impacted by Congress's inaction on this matter. Hundreds of residents have contacted my office stating their support for renewing unemployment insurance. One woman wrote, quote, "I am a professional sales executive with advanced degrees in engineering and business. I was laid off in April 2013 and have been aggressively looking for work in every possible fashion," unquote. Another woman wrote, quote, "I worked for one company for 25 years and another one for 9 years. Please do what you can. I currently have no income and no job. I want to work and will keep looking," unquote. And yet another man wrote, quote, "I am not sitting home watching TV and enjoying my time. This has been an awful year and has changed my life forever. I have 3 kids to provide for, and I have done everything in my power to get a new job. Please do what you can to extend benefits so we can continue to look," unquote. So to date, more than 2 million Americans are reeling from the loss of the lifeline of emergency unemployment insurance. These men and women, many like those I quoted, lost their jobs during the recession through no fault of their own, have faced many obstacles that keep them unemployed, even as they doggedly pursue work. Economists agree that this all has a negative on America's impact on America's economy, the failure to extend unemployment in the short term and in the long run. And there is very little evidence that shows canceling unemployment insurance helps people find jobs. News broke last week that the Senate has reached an agreement on renewing emergency unemployment insurance benefits, but I was dismayed to learn today that already the Speaker of the House of Representatives, John Boehner, has indicated that the House will not take up the bipartisan Senate bill. I am hopeful that both chambers of Congress will continue to work together on a bipartisan basis to take long overdue action. Again, to ask me a question or give your input at any point, just press *3 on your telephone. I also want to address the issue of the minimum wage increase. During his State of the Union address, President Obama vowed to raise the minimum wage for federal contract workers to $10.10. Last month, he signed an executive order doing so, setting the bar for Congress to follow his lead by raising the minimum wage nationwide. Many opponents to raising the minimum wage believe it will hurt the economy and job growth. The truth is, there is no concrete evidence to suggest that raising the minimum wage would cause job losses. A recent report by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office concluded that while raising the minimum age could possibly increase unemployment, it could not say precisely how many jobs would be affected, if any. And a 2011 report from the Center for Economic and Policy Research suggests that wage increases could actually create more jobs. What the CBO report did make clear, however, was that raising the minimum wage will increase earnings for 16.5 million low-wage workers in an average week, and it will help 900,000 families emerge from poverty by increasing their income at no cost to the federal budget. I believe this is an important endeavor that can immediately help millions of Americans, many right here in the 3rd District. Again, to ask me a question or give your input at any point, just press *3 on your telephone. Again, this telephone town hall is a chance for you to interact directly with me from the comfort of your home and provide your input on some of the important issues facing our nation. I am eager to hear from you and hear your questions. And with that, I would like to turn it over now to your questions. Again, if you would like to ask me a question, please press *3 on your telephone now.
All right, and as the Congresswoman said, another reminder, if you have a question, just press *3 at your phone at any point during the call. And we're going to start today with Jeanette from Fitchburg.
I'm on TV.
Good morning, Jeanette. Good evening, Jeanette. Excuse me.
Good evening. Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, and did you have a question? Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
I called about the veterans. I am a big promoter of veterans, and I am very upset that these young men are committing suicide daily. What is the government thinking that they are not helping these young men?
Well,
this is very important. They served our country, and the people have to organize like wounded warriors to help our veterans. Why isn't the government taking care of these people?
Well, I agree with you that this is an issue of deep concern to me, very much so. In fact, just this week, about 2 months ago, I had a meeting in which somebody who works with the National Guard came up to me and said there just weren't sufficient numbers of mental health care providers available to serve the National Guard members who were returning from their deployments in Afghanistan. And the numbers of suicides in the National Guard in Massachusetts alone, we've had 5 confirmed and two not confirmed but suspected. So it is a very real issue here in Massachusetts as much as it is across the country. And this week I met with several representatives to find out what the issues were. So we have a good number of mental health providers in Massachusetts, but the Guard has had only 1 employee per every 6,300 National Guard members to work with our National Guard members and to connect them to the providers that we have here in Massachusetts. And I learned from our Advocate General that they're going to increase that number so that they have more people to coordinate the care of our National Guard members who need it. But that alone is not enough. The other thing we have to do is really focus on efforts to deal with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. And I made a visit to Walter Reed, which is now at Bethesda, to better understand some of the issues, of some of the help and some of the research that we're engaged in to deal with some of these issues. So, for example, traumatic brain injury can be very difficult to help our service members deal with. And there's been some really invaluable research done to really bring back those who are suffering from the most extreme forms. And as we're able to do that, it puts these Guard members, these reservists and active duty members in a better place, feeling more in charge of their own lives and as though they have an opportunity to move on to the next stage of their lives. The other thing that I did this year was there's not a good understanding of just really how many suicides are actually taking place within the Guard and reserves, because once people come home, we aren't able to track them, and so I've included language, seeking to include language in this year's defense bill that would at least give us a better understanding of these issues, as well as we want to better understand where military family members may be committing suicide. There's just a lot of information that we don't have, but there's no denying that this is a very challenging issue, and we have a lot of work to do.
All right. Thank you for your question, and we're going to move right along to Kelly from Methuen. Kelly, you're on the line with the Congresswoman.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening, Kelly. How are you?
I'm fine. I want to thank you for your support for federal employees. I'm out of
Thank
the
you.
IRS in Andover, and as you know, we're doing everything we can every day to combat the identity theft that's ruined the lives for so many victims.
Well, I appreciate the work you do, and I do think that, often as we're making tough decisions in Washington to address our national deficit, we too often see federal civil servants targeted in a lot of the more outrageous debate that we engage in. I firmly believe that our federal employees provide, as you just mentioned, identity theft and many other vital services to hundreds of millions of Americans. And the work that you do and so many others do is so important to us as a country, and your compensation and benefits really need to fairly reflect that.
All right. Thank you, Kelly, for your question. And we're going to move right along to Kevin from Lowell. Kevin, you're on the line with the Congresswoman.
Yes, good afternoon, Congresswoman. How are you?
Oh, good, Kevin. How are you?
Not too bad. As somebody in the district, could you please explain why you're a supporter of Obamacare and has benefited the district in any way, and kind of a piggyback on that issue, why do we always represent the illegal people and put them ahead of the line of people that are here as legal and tax-paying and working folks? And I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, first of all, just to clarify, and I don't know that you're necessarily linking the two, but the Affordable Care Act does not provide health insurance to anyone who is living in this country who is undocumented. So just to be very clear about that, because we often hear otherwise. But the reality is the Affordable Care Act does not provide health insurance to those who are undocumented. It does offer assistance to legal non-U.S. citizens, those who are here legally, but that's very different from very different than a non-U.S. resident who's here legally. The Affordable Care Act actually has done many good things. It was signed into law 4 years ago. It was upheld by the Supreme Court, and when voters reelected Barack Obama, it was a referendum in part on the broad support for the Affordable Care Act. It's had a very positive impact. Over 5 million people who were previously uninsured are now insured. Over 3 million young people have been able to stay on their parents' plans until they're 26 years old as a result of the Affordable Care Act. Over 17 million adults and children with pre-existing conditions can no longer be excluded from coverage because they happen to have a pre-existing condition. So I think those are just three small indications of the work that's being done. Massachusetts created the template for it as a result of the work that we did here. Insurance coverage expanded to virtually 98% of Massachusetts citizens, and that is the overarching goal of the Affordable Care Act as it is implemented across this country.
All right. Thank you for your question. We're going to move along right now to John from Marlboro. John, you're live with the Congresswoman.
How you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, John. How are you?
Mine is kind of complicated, but in a straight term. We have, these men and women go and serve our country, and they come back with broken promises. They have these come back with missing limbs, and all of a sudden they have no support system from the VA system. They have it, but they have such a delay for benefits. And that's my biggest beef is I see this being, a veteran helping out and doing care package drives and all this stuff. And it's just a disgrace for our country,
Well,
why is it that way?
Well, it's as you say, it is a complicated issue, and a lot of progress has been made, but we have a long way to go. One of the issues, as I don't know if you heard me mention in my opening remarks, that I have a Veterans Advisory Committee, and I bring this committee together at least once a year to sort of hear what the issues are, and we do hear over and over again about the backlog in the claims processing by the VA. So last year I supported legislation that really invested a good sum of money to improve the numbers of people who were in place to process these records. We're doing a lot of work to make the transfer of records from active duty to the VA side go more seamlessly. It's proven to be a huge technological challenge as they try to integrate the two systems. But nevertheless, we understand we have to keep at it. I also supported legislation that said for each service member that no sooner than 90 days after the date of their discharge or release from active duty, that the active duty records should be made available to the VA, again with the goal of speeding up this process, because the backlog is not acceptable and not tenable. I did have Secretary Coleman Nee, who's the Secretary of Veterans Services, come and speak to our group this week. And he said, for example, that Massachusetts is the only state to have a Veterans Affairs officer in every town. So if you live in a particular town, you have somebody who you can go to, usually would be located in your city hall or town hall, who can help connect someone to the resources that are available. There's been a strong effort to reach out and reduce the number of homeless veterans across the Commonwealth. Again, this is a statewide program that Mr. Nee certainly takes very seriously and works very hard at. They have a program to provide peer-to-peer support. What we do here, I had an earlier question about mental health services and the incidence of suicide. But we do hear over and over again that if a mental health provider has not had experience of their own serving in the military, they're often not sought out, or often not their care is not perceived as really connecting with the particular veteran. So Massachusetts has put together a peer-to-peer support service for them, and more than 20,000 veterans with more than 20,000 veterans in it. So the reality is there is a lot to be done, but I should let you know that my office takes this issue very seriously, and if you know of anybody who is having difficulty getting the services they need, please refer them to my office. Haley Roy, who again is a very young retired service member, is serving in our office and does a great job, and we are happy to help.
All right, excellent. We're going to move right on now to Carol from Clinton. Carol, you're on the phone with Congresswoman Tsongas.
Hi, Carol.
Carol,
Carol, are you there?
Looks like we've lost Carol. And just another reminder, if you'd like to ask Congresswoman Tsongas a question, you can press *3 on your phone at any point during the call. And right now we're actually going to do a poll question. Congresswoman Tsongas?
Yes. Throughout this teletown hall, I'll do several poll questions that helps me gauge everybody who's listening, what your support is for a certain issue. So this one is on unemployment insurance. The question I have is, do you believe that Congress should renew unemployment insurance for the long-term unemployed? Press 1 if you do believe Congress should renew unemployment insurance, and press 2 if you don't believe it should be renewed.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Congresswoman. And we will have the results of that poll later on during the town hall. Right now, again, just another reminder, press *3 on your phone at any point tonight, and if you'd like to ask a question. Right now, we're going to move right along to Hazel from Marlborough. Hazel, you're on the phone with Congresswoman Tsongas.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good evening, Hazel.
How are you?
Good.
My question is concerns the difficulty that's going on with the Crimea selection and its annexation to Russia. And the second part, that's the Obama policy. So my question to you is, do you agree with this interference with what's going on? To me, it's like another civil war. And secondly, what do you think of the sanctions that he placed on the underlings associated with Putin and not Putin directly? So That's my question to you.
Well, it's a great question. It's certainly something that's front and center that I'm sure many of us on the online today, on the phone tonight, have been following quite closely. I certainly believe that Mr. Putin's actions and Russia's illegal annexation of a sovereign Ukrainian territory in Crimea is unacceptable. And I also think that the circumstances surrounding the referendum last weekend is hard to consider, given the way it played out, that the vote that took place in Crimea was legitimate, and it's certainly a violation of international norms and needs to be treated as such. Going forward, I think it's in the best interest of this country to work with the European Union and the other world powers to try to de-escalate the tensions, try to bring it down a bit. I don't think at this point we have military options that we can pursue, and the best thing is to pursue non-military options, using aid and our assistance in a way that provides stability to Ukraine. The goal has got to be to have a unified, stable, and democratic Ukraine that will start the process of meaningful political and economic reform. I do think we have to look at sanctions. I think the ones that the president put in place were, a modest indication, but I do, and perhaps not likely to be particularly effective at this point. But we're going to have to continue to look at sanctions and other non-military options to make sure that Russia is held accountable. And I don't know that we can undo what's happened in Crimea, but to make sure that that they stop there and that Mr. Putin stops there.
All right. Thank you, Hazel, for your question. And we're going to move along right now to John from Lowell. John, you're on the phone right now with Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas.
Hey, Nikki, thanks for doing this. This is a really cool idea you got going on here.
Hi, John. Well, technology allows me to do it, and so it's a great way to reach people. You don't have to come out on a cold night, and I can just reach so many people doing this, and I enjoy doing it and enjoy hearing from people.
Well, I love it. This is great. I got 3 questions for you. 1, is there any such thing as a Buy American-Made program that you've ever heard of? Because I don't hear any politician ever say Buy American-Made. I don't hear any Jay Leno's ever saying Buy American-Made. Page 2, question number 2 is labeling. I'm finding it much more difficult to find out where a product's made as I'm purchasing it. And for instance, I'm over to Sam's Club a couple of weeks ago looking to buy a little refrigerator, and I had to tip the package upside down, and in very small print, it finally said made in China. So labeling's an issue, and have you made a decision to run for re-election? Those are my 3 questions. Thanks, Nikki.
Well, I've absolutely made a decision to run for re-election. We're in the process of collecting signatures to get on the ballot. I have to have 2,000 certified signatures in order to qualify for the ballot, and we will aim for well past that, so that we know we have a guaranteed 2,000 signatures. So I'm definitely in the process. I'm glad you had the strength to turn over the small refrigerator. Not everybody can do that, but I have to say I do that myself, because I'm as intent as possible on buying products made in this country wherever I can. And to that effort, one thing that I have championed with Mike Michaud from Maine is something called the Berry Amendment, which was initiated and put in place during World War II, that said our soldiers who were fighting in our behalf should go to war wearing American-made products. And the Defense Department has abided by that in general, but several years ago made an exception for training shoes for people who were coming into the service and needed to be trained. And at the time, their rationale was that there was not really an all-American-made trainer, and there wasn't a sufficient number of manufacturers to choose from. But in the interim, New Balance in Lawrence has made a considered investment in producing a training shoe that is all U.S. made, including the sole. They've worked on every component part to comply with that requirement. The Defense Department put out a request for sourcing to see if there were other companies that could produce and manufacture an American-made training shoe, and several came forward, so there is an indication there would be more than adequate choice And so this year, as I did last year, I pursued in the defense bill a requirement that these training shoes, as they are issued to new recruits who come into and seek to serve our country, that they be given a choice of different military, different American-made manufactured training shoes. So I know that we have to promote American-made manufacturing, and sometimes we have to do it in a very particular way, but in general, I think we have to continue to innovate. We're stellar at that in this part of the country. Continue to innovate and develop the workforce training for the kind of advanced manufacturing jobs that are proliferating throughout our district and throughout the Commonwealth. Now, I'd like to report on the poll, which was, if you believe that do you believe Congress should renew unemployment insurance for the long-term unemployed? 81% of you said yes, 19% of you said no.
All right, thank you, Congresswoman. Again, another reminder, if you would like to ask the Congresswoman a question, press *3 on your phone at any point tonight. And right now we are going to go to John from Marlboro. John, you're on the phone with Congresswoman Tsongas.
Hello, Congresswoman.
Hello, John. How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you for hanging in here tonight.
I know. My question is, when are we going to start rebuilding the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the airports, the grid, instead of bailing out the billionaires all the time? Then we possibly wouldn't need these extensions on unemployment benefits, and maybe that would ripple through the economy instead of waiting for the trickle down. Everything seems to be trickling up, so that's my question.
Well, I agree with you. As I was driving into Boston this morning and just observing yet again the kind of investment we need to make in our roads, and reading an article also, as well as the extraordinary investment it's going to take in modernizing the grid. It's something that we can't put off, and we do know that a budget is a reflection of our values, and the President's budget this year focuses very much on investing and expanding opportunities for all Americans. So he seeks to close special interest tax loopholes. The budget, by doing taxes, cutting taxes for 13.5 million working Americans and investing in education and domestic job creation. He would expand the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit, which establish automatic IRAs to help workers save for their future and provide tax relief that helps students pay for college. And clearly, over and over again, he has proposed programs to invest in our infrastructure. But my colleagues across the aisle steadfastly refuse to consider those kinds of legislation. So elections have consequences. Those of us who are elected take our values to work with us every day. And I certainly agree with you that we have to better invest in those things that help grow our country and grow our economy.
All right. Thank you, John, for your question. We're going to move on right now to Jane from Methuen. Jane, you're on the line with the Congresswoman.
Thank you. My question is about student loans. My husband and I are in a position that we can pay off our children's student loans. We sold stock. My children are out of college, by the way, and we're in a position that we can pay them off. My question to you is, we're so afraid to do that because as soon as we do it, we feel like there's going to be something come through Congress that is going to give some kind of a break to the situation. Is there anything in Congress that's going to give parents such as ourselves any kind of break? It's like we're paying a mortgage payment to pay off these kids' school loans. And
the issue of student loans is so important because, and it's important for families like yours where you and your husband are able to absorb those loans and help your kids pay them off. It's also so important for young people who take them on themselves and will be paying back these tuition costs for years to come. And in an economy that's ever more dependent on higher education, I know that as in my work at Middlesex Community College, where I was a dean as I concluded my service there. Again, seeing just how hard it is for families even to absorb the cost of a community college or for a young person to do that. And yet as I visit companies, in our district. Yeah, I see again how important it is. I went to one of our larger employers, and of the 1,200 employees, 800 of them were engineers. So that tells you that we have got to encourage young people to go on in science, technology, engineering, and math. That's just where there is that direct linkage to those jobs. But in general, there is a need for higher education. So Congress has tried to address this issue, but unfortunately, last year in July of 2013, Congress passed a bill that I was unable to support in the end, because it would significantly increase costs for students over the next decade. What it did is look at the interest rate that the federal government was charging to those who are borrowing money. So instead of maintaining a fixed rate so that certain students and families would know what the interest rate was going to be over the life of their loan, the bill linked student loan interest rates to fluctuations in the price of a 10-year Treasury bond. And as that bond rate was lower when the bill was passed, it lowered the interest rates in the near term, but over the long term would allow them to go up as high as 8.25% for undergraduate borrowers and 9.5% for graduates and 10.5% for students. For parents, all of that above the current rate of 6.8%. So this would increase federal profits from student borrowers, which I don't agree with. Elizabeth Warren has really led the effort on this, on stopping this. Ed Markey supports her efforts. Most of the Mass delegation voted against the bill, and I simply could not support legislation that pits students against one another. Nor could I support a bill that profits the government at the expense of our students. I think our government has to be in the business of encouraging students to go on to college, not making it more difficult. And so this will not go away. This is not an issue that's going to go away. We will be revisiting it because the high cost of education is one that concerns us all, and I understand the concerns you have. But at the moment, there is nothing out there in which we would be immediately revisiting the issue, but it will not go away.
All right. Again, just another reminder, if you're listening in and you have a question for Congresswoman Tsongas, don't hesitate. Press *3 on your phone at any point to be connected to ask your question. And I think right now we have another poll question. Congresswoman?
Yes. I'd like to ask a question about the minimum wage, and that is, do you support raising the minimum wage at the federal level to $10.10? If you think the minimum wage should be raised, press 1. And if you think the current minimum wage should stay in place as it is, press 2. So again, if you would like to see the minimum wage raised to $10.10, press 1, and press 2 if you oppose it.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. And right now we're going to go to Carol from Clinton. Carol, you're on the line with Congresswoman Tsongas.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening, Carol.
My question is regarding the health care situation. I'd like to understand the difference between the federal government vendoring, say, for an example, neighborhood health plan and private insurance. It appears that the federal government is getting into doing exactly what private health care insurance provides and is doing. So what is the difference? I just lost my insurance and my husband after 18 years at his job and 14 years at another job. We lost our private insurance, and I am now going through the process, which is daunting regarding applying for health care insurance.
And you're going through the Massachusetts Exchange?
Yes.
Our office can help walk you through it because
I understand that part of it, and I got the person I need to speak with. My question is, it appears that there's not a difference. It appears that the federal government is playing the role of a private health care provider, for an example, Blue Cross Blue Shield. What is the difference?
Well, the only federal health care insurance plan, and it's basically similar to a single payer plan, is Medicare. and that is one that our seniors are eligible for and has been very successful. The different plans on the exchange is a neighborhood health plan. I'm not particularly familiar with that one, but they are different insurance plans that are made available. All these insurance plans have got to meet certain basic requirements. Part of the Accountable Care Act, the Affordable Care Act, was to create so you could compare apples to apples in a lot of instances and know that basic things had to be covered. There were reforms that were part of this. You can't be excluded for a pre-existing condition. As a woman, you cannot be charged more just simply because you're a woman. Your children can stay on the plan until they're 26. All preventative services, those that are deemed to be preventative, have to be covered by all insurance plans at no cost. So these are just different plans that come forward to offer coverage. Beyond the basics, though, there are differences. But the only health care plan that is government-run is Medicare. And now to get back to you on the second poll question, 81% of you support raising the minimum wage at the federal level to $10.10, and 19% of you think that the current minimum wage should stay in place as is.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. Moving on right now, we're going to go to Judith from Hudson. Judith, you're on the line with Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas.
Hello, Congresswoman.
Hi, Judith. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I have a question on the windfall retirement plan. I worked for many, many years in paying Social Security and counting on Social Security for my retirement. But the last 14 years, I taught in a public school, and therefore I have a very small public school retirement. But I am under the windfall plan that decreases my Social Security, and I truly am getting a retirement that is poverty level. I just wonder what is happening on that. As I understand it, there are only 9 states in the country that have this plan.
You're right. There are very few states that have it, which is why it has been difficult to address and generate a majority support for changing it. But I hear about this issue, the windfall elimination provision, which for those who are online who don't know what it is, it reduces Social Security benefits for workers who have pension benefits from employers not covered by Social Security. So it's when you're working for entities in which you're not contributing to Social Security while you're working there, and they have as part of the agreement to allow states to do this. They came up with this the windfall elimination provision called the WEP. I have heard from however, because Massachusetts is one of those states that entered into this agreement, I hear from many of my constituents, and I have been a sponsor of a piece of legislation that was introduced by a Republican from Illinois, Rodney Davis, which would repeal this provision. So it would make sure that people who are firefighters, teachers, as you are, other public servants, are not deprived of your portion of your Social Security benefits as a result of this agreement. So we'll work hard to try to get it out of committee. It's helpful that it has Republican sponsorship, given that the Republican majority controls the flow of legislation in the House of Representatives. But it is an issue that I'm well aware of and understand the hardship it imposes, and we'll keep working at trying to fix it.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you for that question. Another reminder, if you'd like to ask the Congresswoman a question, just press *3 on your phone at any point here. And right now we're going to go to Joan from Gardner. Joan, you're on the line with Congresswoman Tsongas.
Good evening.
Joan, are you there?
Yes, good evening, Congresswoman.
Hi, Joan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for taking my call. I really do appreciate it, and thanks for having this meeting.
Well, thank you for staying on. Thank you.
Congresswoman, I'm going to tell you what happened to me. I had a job for 25 years, and the company downsized, and I lost the job. The unemployment recommended to me to return to school to get some updated skills. I did, and I took out a student loan. Right in the middle of my second semester, my Section 30 funds were taken away from me. I was placed at a grave disadvantage because at that time I could not drop out of school because then I'd have to repay my loan within 6 months. I'm still in school and have absolutely no source of income. My question to you, is the Section 30 the same as the emergency unemployment funds?
I believe it is, but I could not tell you that since I don't often think of things in terms of like a bill number. I tend to know more what it's about than the number that it's assigned. So I'd be happy to look into it. But if it is the unemployment extension of the emergency unemployment insurance, I think may have seen that the Senate has reached an agreement on renewing them, which is very good news. What's unfortunate news is that the Speaker of the House, Mr. Boehner, today said that they would not take up the Senate bill, which is bipartisan in nature, with both sides of the aisle agreeing to it. So, we in Congress, you're not alone. I hear from many in this district of people who are working hard, have worked hard for many years, continue to look hard for jobs, are investing in bringing new skills as you are. And who desperately need to have these benefits extended. But we're happy if you follow up with my office to see if it is the same as Section 30. It's just off the top of my head. I don't know. And the number here is 978-459-0101.
All right. Thank you for that question. Again, another reminder, still time if you would like to ask a question to press *3 on your phone at any point and be connected to ask your question to the Congresswoman. We're going to move on right now to Albina from Gardner. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Hi, Congresswoman Tsongas. I'm calling from Gardner, Massachusetts, and my question has to do with Medicare. I've noticed that they've cut back on some of the payments scheduled for doctors, especially primary care, who don't get a very big chunk of the change. And also the sequestration, there's a new item that's added to the present Medicare bills that shows something to do with a sequestration, which means that the provider has to absorb the cost or the individual has to absorb the cost. So I wondered what happened with that and why is that in place now? And also on occupational and physical therapy, there is a cap on the number of visits that they can provide. So can you address the question and tell me a little bit more about what the cuts are in the Medicare program?
Well, as many on the line know, Medicare is the health insurance program that's relied on by millions of our country's seniors and especially our district seniors. So there's a number of issues that you've raised. Sequestration was the across-the-board cuts that took place, went into effect when we were unable to come to an agreement about how to find over $1 trillion in savings in the federal budget. I, for one, have been a strong proponent of finding a path forward that includes new revenue as well as thoughtful cuts. But the sequestration was across-the-board cuts. The impact on Medicare, however, in the agreement was limited. So the cut to Medicare was not as severe as it was across the rest of the federal budget. And sequestration has been resolved and lifted for the next 2 years. There's another issue in terms of how we reimburse physicians through Medicare. And it has a flawed formula, something called the sustainable growth rate, that leads to undervaluing the work that providers provide and not paying them appropriately. So what we've done in Congress on a year-to-year basis is come up with what we call a temporary fix to these problems so that seniors can continue to have access to their providers. Because what you don't want is if these cuts were to go in place, a lot of physicians would not be able to provide the services that our seniors absolutely need. So there was a recent vote to fix it. It was, however, at the expense of one of the major provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and so I was not able to support it. This particular provision will not even be taken up by the Senate, so we are going to have to come up with a new way forward. We did try to permanently resolve that issue. The Senate passed a very reasonable approach to fixing it, so providers knew that they would be paid in a reasonable and fair way, and seniors could count on their doctors being available to them. And not withdrawing from Medicare because they weren't going to be paid fairly. We found a reasonable way forward, but unfortunately the Senate, which I supported, unfortunately the Senate did not take that up. So this is an ongoing issue, something that's so important to our seniors, and we have an obligation to continue to work at it till we get it right. So I appreciate your question.
All right, thank you. And Congresswoman, we're going to move on right now to Jim from Marlboro. Jim, you're live with Congresswoman Tsongas.
Hi, thank you for taking our calls. I think it's great what you're doing.
Hi, Jim. Thank you.
You just made a quick remark, and my many years in business has taught me one thing very quickly. It was much easier to cut expenses than to raise new revenues when I was trying to get to a profit. And I think if politicians started thinking that way, we'd all be a lot better off.
I understand your point, but I also understand I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and we have what we call posture hearings, and that's where each of the branches of the services, all the different commands come in to talk about their budgets. And what I hear over and over again, just in that little slice, well, it's actually not a small slice, it's half of the discretionary budget. That's where we make decisions every year as to how to spend our dollars. That given the cuts that they have had to absorb, they're at a point where they're compromising the readiness of our soldiers, and readiness is a term of art that says we've adequately trained our soldiers to do the work they're tasked to do we put them in harm's way, but we cannot put them in harm's way knowing that they're not adequately trained to do the job. And really confronting real modernization challenges. I, for one, have always thought there was plenty of room to cut in the Defense Department, but I think we're getting to the bone. So in order to go forward and not eviscerate the many other important programs that we also invest in as a country on the non-defense side, I think we're going to have to look at a way to include some revenue. But so I agree that cutting is, and we've done a lot. We've done $1.2 trillion. We've done sequestration for a couple of years, has taken out another big chunk, and sequestration remains in place for the out years and the next 8 years after we get through these next two. So it doesn't work. It's across the board cutting. We've got to do it more thoughtfully.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you for that question. I believe the Congresswoman has one more poll question for everyone.
This next poll question is, what do you think is the most important issue facing Congress in the coming months? Press 1 for job creation. Press 2 for fixing the immigration system. Press 3 for addressing climate change. Press 4 for responding to concerning international situations like those in Syria, Venezuela, and the Ukraine. And press 5 for other. I'm going to go through it all again. Press 1 for job creation, 2 for fixing the immigration system, 3 for addressing climate change, 4 for responding to concerning international situations such as in the Ukraine, and press 5 for other.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman. And we're going to go right now to Maureen from Haverhill. Maureen, you're on right now with Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas.
Hi. My concern is with the post office, or it's one of many concerns, I should say, with this foolishness of having to fund the retirements and stuff for 75 years. I mean, some of the employees that at that point haven't even been born. Yet, what insane idea was this? The Republicans would be all over you if you suggested doing this to a private business, which basically the post office really is. It's not funded by tax dollars, contrary to what most people seem to think. You know, it needs to stop. I don't understand why nobody is stopping this.
Well, the issue of the post office is a very important one. You know, we see the way in which they fund the pensions is, you know, one of the issues. The need to reduce the numbers of post offices, highly contentious, because especially in rural areas, or if you're a senior who gets delivery of important medicines through the mail. So just to give a little background, according to the Postmaster General, the Postal Service did post a $1.3 billion loss in the first quarter of last year. And there are a number of reasons for it, but the real one is just that we're not using mail the way we used to. We tend to do much more of our business via online. I'm sure all of us do that, and or using our cell phones and other ways or our smartphones to do a lot of interaction. So as a result, the post office they delivered almost 17% fewer pieces of mail between 2006 and 2010, and we know this trend will just continue. And so by 2020, the Postal Service thinks it will have about $238 billion in cumulative losses. It has the Postal Service, as you mentioned, has a real freedom to run its operations, and as you also said, it does not rely on funding from Congress to operate. And so, in order to address its own financial difficulties, the Postal Service is going to use its own authority to take two actions. It's going to expand the number of products and services it offers to increase revenue. I think we've seen a proposal to, replace some of the payday lending that goes on and do short-term loans. Raises some important issues, but it's something we should think about. And cut costs by reducing its delivery network and reducing its number of full-time staff. But again, those raise real issues that we have to think about. So the issue of the pension obligation, I have co-sponsored legislation that would address this. It was introduced by Representative Lynch from Massachusetts, and it would revise the methodology used to calculate the contributions that the Postal Service needs to make. So that's something that we will continue to work on as we go forward, because it is so important that Congress pass legislation that protects the postal services of this country. Now, the results of the last poll question, when asked what do you think is the most important issue facing Congress in the coming months, 34% of you said job creation, 21% of you said fixing the immigration system, 14% said addressing climate change, 9% said responding to concerning international situations like as we see in Ukraine, and 22% said something other than those four. With that, I'd like to thank you all for participating in tonight's Teletown Hall. As always, this discussion was so helpful to me, and I enjoy so much hearing directly from you about what matters to you and what you think is important, what you're thinking about in your daily lives. If you didn't have a chance to get to a question this evening, there will be a chance to leave me a voicemail in just a minute, and we'd be happy to get back to you on your question. But it is very important that if you want to get a response to your question, that as you leave it, you also leave your name, your address, your phone number, and your email address. So again, I need your name, address, phone number, and email address. You can also visit me at my website, which is www.tsongas.house.gov, or follow me on Twitter and Facebook to learn more about what I'm working on, or to email me any thoughts or questions. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/reptsongas and on Twitter at Nikki in the House. So thanks again for choosing to be a part of tonight's Teletown Hall meeting. Have a good evening. Good night.